When Me Before You came out, I thought I understood it. It was just another sad chick flick. The kind you watch once, cry a little, then mentally file away as emotionally devastating but harmless. But rewatching it now, years later as a young adult, something feels off. Not because it's manipulative, not because it's too sad, but because the sadness isn't coming from where I remembered. Me Before You isn't just about love or loss. It's about what happens when a person starts to believe their life only has value if it looks a certain way, and how quietly everyone around them reinforces that idea. This isn't a takedown. This isn't an accusation. It's a retrospective about discomfort. Because this movie didn't just make me cry this time, it made me uneasy and think about my own life and others and what makes it worth living. I'm hoping this video will make you consider yours. This video will contain spoilers. On the surface, Me Before You is simple and introduces us to two individuals that live completely different lives and opposite personalities. Will Traynor had everything he ever wanted: a beautiful girlfriend, wealth, successful career, with an active and adventurous lifestyle. Louisa Clark is stuck. She lives in a small town with almost no dreams and expectations, not really ambitious or willing to take risks, especially in her relationship with Patrick. Her family struggles significantly with money while she worked at a local cafe. Both their lives drastically changed after Will Traynor gets into a motorcycle accident and wakes up paralyzed. He loses his girlfriend, Lissa, because he was cold and dismissive towards her after his injury. Louisa is assigned to be his caregiver. Their opposite personalities clash, soften, then they fall in love, and the movie frames this as a story about choice. Will has decided that life in his current body isn't a life he wants to live. Louisa wants to show him that life can still be meaningful. The tension comes from the question, can love change someone's mind? But the movie ends up answering a different question. Not whether life is worth living, but how much living is too much before you become a burden. One of the most striking things about rewatching is how Will is framed long before he makes his final decision. Everyone around him treats him like a finished story. His parents speak to him gently, carefully, like any strong emotion might break something. His former life is talked about in the past tense. His future is barely discussed at all. Even when he's alive, present, sharp, sarcastic, the film constantly reminds us that the real Will existed before the accident. What he is now is portrayed as an afterimage. And when someone is treated like they've already been lost, it becomes much easier to accept the idea that losing them is inevitable. That framing matters, because choices don't exist in a vacuum. Will doesn't just say he's unhappy, he says he doesn't want to live a life where he needs help. A life where his parents have to restructure everything around him. A life where his presence limits other people's freedom. And the movie never really challenges that fear. Instead, it treats it as logical, almost noble. The worst thing Will imagines isn't pain, it's dependency. I can relate to Will because I was in a similar situation that required me to be dependent on someone else. I needed an implant because I had nerve damage. This required me to have a caregiver to monitor me after surgery. My mom offered to drive 4 hours to come get me, then drive another hour to the surgery center. I felt awful because she would have to take time off of work, wait for my procedure to finish, and would be doing all that driving. Luckily, my sister was available that day and took me, but she was still 2 hours away. When my procedure was done, I told her to go back home. I felt like an asshole, but I didn't want to hold her back. I wanted her to return to her normal life and do what she would have been doing hadn't I become afflicted. Will felt this way with Louisa. He saw the potential in her and thought that she was wasting her life taking care of him. And that idea, that needing others makes your life less valid, is something we absorb long before this movie ever tells it to us. We live in a culture that praises independence and quietly shames need, where being self-sufficient is moral and requiring care is framed as failure. So when Will calls himself a burden, the movie doesn't argue, it sympathizes. What sets the movie apart from the book, and I may have missed this in the movie, let me know if so. In the book there is a quote from Will's father, Stephen. I quote, "I knew it, and Camila knew it. Even if neither of us would admit it to ourselves, only on my son's death would I be free to live the life of my choosing. It's rough when not only does Will not want to be alive anymore, but his dad wants him dead so he can return to his normal life. This is important. Louisa Clark is not the problem. She is not a villain. She's sincere, she's kind, she genuinely believes that love, experience, and connection can change how Will sees the world. She takes him out, she talks to him like a human being, not a tragedy. She tries to widen his life instead of shrinking it. But love, on its own, can't replace structural support. Louisa is expected to emotionally compensate for a system that has already decided Will's future is smaller than his past. And that's an impossible role. She's not failing him. She's being asked to do too much. The most uncomfortable moment in the film isn't the ending. It's when the people around Will begin to accept his decision. Even Louisa Clark, whose primary job was trying to prove life is still worth living, accompanies him to support his choice and honoring his desire to die with dignity. Not because they agree with it, but because they understand it. And understanding quickly becomes validation. The movie frames this as maturity, as respect. But there's a difference between respecting someone's feelings and reinforcing the belief that their life has already lost its value. This is dangerous. I am not arguing my opinion of assisted suicide. In fact, I'm not arguing anything. I'm questioning that at no point does the film or book seriously imagine a future where Will's life expands instead of contracts. The question is never, what would it take to make this life livable? It's, how do we make this ending feel peaceful? I think this makes Will's situation that much more devastating. Watching this movie now feels different because the fear it taps into is everywhere. The fear of being inconvenient, the fear of needing too much, the fear that if we can't contribute the right way, we don't deserve to stay. We see it in burnout culture, in productivity obsession, and the way people apologize for existing when they need help. I kid you not, this is everywhere. I have people at my workplace that are too afraid of putting in repair tickets and apologize when they do so. I always assure them that I am there for them and I want to help. There's nothing to be afraid of. It's also part of my job. Yet, it never sticks. Me Before You doesn't invent this fear. It reflects it, and that's what makes it uncomfortable. This video isn't saying Will isn't allowed to choose or condemning his choice. It isn't saying suffering doesn't exist. It's asking why the world around him made that choice feel so inevitable. Why dignity is framed as independence, why care is framed as cost, why love is allowed to say goodbye, but not allowed to demand more life. Those are cultural questions, not character flaws. Me Before You wants to be about love letting go, but what it accidentally becomes is a story about how easily we accept loss when someone's life no longer fits our definition of success. It doesn't ask whether Will deserved more life. It asks whether his death can be made beautiful enough to bear. And that says less about him and more about us. This movie didn't ruin itself for me, but it did reveal something I hadn't noticed before. Sometimes the most dangerous ideas aren't loud or cruel, they're quiet, sympathetic, wrapped in love. And that's why Me Before You lingers, not because it's sad, but because it forces us to confront a question we usually avoid. What do we do with people whose lives don't look the way we expect them to? And how often do we mistake compassion for surrender? The cost is pushing away those that love you.